Hey everybody, I hope you all are doing well and welcome back to Whiskey Wonders. And today we are going to put together two of our visits to a couple of Costcos. We could call them a medley of Costcos in San Diego, where we're going to look at a nice step up the whiskey line in the Yellowstone families. In fact, the Yellowstone single malt American whiskey, which is really interesting, as well as a whiskey that only started to show up in Costco's, at least here in California, I think for the first time. Yeah, I think this is the first time I've ever really seen it here in California, which is the Peerless Small Batch Bourbon. That's the red label one. And really, a whole bunch more. Now, before we get to the video, if you like these videos, if you like the wanders, if you like the hauls, if you like the reviews, the unbottlings, the unboxings, and really all the amazing stuff that we got cooking up for you, don't forget to like and subscribe, because it does really help the channel to grow, and we are so thankful for that. But also because you get updates when our newest videos come out on Sundays and, sometimes in between. All right, now, let's get down to the video. So today, while we are warming up, let me get a glass here. While I'm warming up, and hopefully you are too, let's do a real quick whiskey check. And today, I think I am going to be enjoying, I'm going to go back a little old school here and stick with something that is one of the first early nice bourbons I ever got, which is this Eagle Rare 10. So let's see if we can get a pop here. Let's turn it over both sides. See if we can get a pop. Ah, not too bad. Get a little bit of juice. Oh, yeah. And to whiskey. Because honestly, think about it. You can never really drink too much of it. You can only just drink it too fast. Cheers. Oh, yeah. That hit the spot. So first up today is a whiskey that has a long pedigree within the American whiskey world, but hasn't really been around that long. I'd say it's part of the most recent kind of cohort of whiskey companies to make a splash in the market over the last 5 to 10 years, which is this Yellowstone American Single Malt whiskey. And this bottle specifically is spotted at the Costco in San Diego next to IKEA. Now, speaking of pedigree, the master distiller at the Limestone Branch Distillery, who is the people who make the Yellowstone whiskey, is Stephen Beam. And yes, he is from that Beam family. But he brings into focus a growing trend in American whiskey, which is to make single malted whiskey. Now, single malts, of course, they've been around in Europe for centuries, really, at this point, especially like in Scotland. So they're super common to find, but not so much here on this side of Greenland. I know there is the Campfire that I know they were kind of messing with it. There's the Yellowstone. There's another one I can't think of off the top of my head that was also single malt, but they haven't really quite taken off here in the United States as they have in Europe. The malt they're referring to in this case is 100% malted barley, which means that obviously it would not be considered a bourbon because it's not corn-based, and it's not considered a rye. Well, obviously because it's not a rye, there's no rye in it. Now, one of the quirks of the whiskey business is that the juice in the Yellowstone single malt is sourced from MGP, but it's actually sort of not sourced because the parent company of Limestone Brewing, Luxco, was purchased by MGP. So yeah, it is sourced, but it's in the same family of companies. Kind of like when Taco Bell started making those taco shells, but out of Doritos, because they're both subsidiaries of PepsiCo and Frito-Lay. Additionally, I think that the push for single malt American whiskeys is really an interesting departure from the other lane of new age whiskeys that are coming up in America, which is to make crazy blends of ridiculous amounts of mash bills all put into one types of whiskey to make them really overly complex concoctions, like you see with like a Barrel Spirits or maybe like a Bardstown, who have mash bills that are essentially a mile long and very healthy ABVs. I do like those ABVs. But the Yellowstone, it seems to be a strong juxtaposition against that, and the mindset of that, in the sense that it is just one single grain in a very simple mash bill, and an ABV that's okay, but it's not anything to write home about. The price that we see it at Costco, actually we don't see the price here in this video because the tag is somewhere else down the line, so we'll get to see that in a second, but it is at $39.99, which is a pretty good price considering the next lowest price is going to be at Total Wine, who has it for $46.99. And Bevmo, well, it appears that Bevmo is out of stock. So that would mean that if we bought the Yellowstone single malt here at Costco, then we would have saved $5 off the Total Wine price, or 12.50% in savings. Now, speaking of the ABV, like I said, it's not bad, right? It's definitely a decent ABV. The ABV on the Yellowstone single malt is at 54% ABV, or 108 proof, which is noticeably higher than the standard Yellowstone ABVs, and really kind of a nice step up. The tasting notes that I could find on it mention things like a strong cereal flavor, as well as sweetness, as well as stone fruits and walnuts, and an oily texture. That sounds interesting for sure. Overall, the reviews that I could find on the Yellowstone single malt were not great. They were in the low 80s out of 100, specifically 83 points on average. I don't know. I think it's interesting to see an American whiskey that is a single malt. That is interesting, right? But the thing is, there's a lot of single malts out there if you are willing to step into the Scotch arena. And for the same price and for the same age, there are going to be a lot of better ones as well. So I think for me, this one is going to be a pass, primarily because there's a lot more Scotch that I want to get into and a lot more single malts that I want to get into before I start going into like the more avant-garde kind of areas like they would have with the American single malt. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. I like to see them pushing the boundaries of American whiskeys, but so far, I don't think this one's going to be for me. So this one's going to be a pass. Now, next up, as we move to the northern part of San Diego, to a Costco located on Carmel Mountain Road, there's a newcomer, at least new to the West Coast Costcos. Yeah, I've seen them occasionally at Total Wines, like online or Bevmo's, but really this is the first time I've seen them at Costco in person, which is the Peerless Small Batch Bourbon. Also, like I said, you see a lot of these on the whiskey socials being posted up. But again, first time I've ever seen it in person. It's distilled by the Kentucky Peerless Distilling Company. Despite its very squatty and identifiable bottle, the label on it has a very cool, like old-timey feel to it, like something you'd find in the back of a dusty old grandpa's closet or something like that, or maybe on the edge of the bar. It hasn't been poured since 1984, but it looks cool on the bar. It doesn't have an age statement on it, but it does have a very Neapolitan mash bill, and I'm talking about the ice cream, not the city, with a mash bill of an estimated 10 to 12% rye, 9 to 15% malted barley, and 65 to 81% corn. So it is really going to be pretty heavily corn-based, potentially. But either way, this would make for a very nice complexity on the palate. At least I think so. This was another one of those bourbons that actually did start back in the heyday of whiskey in the United States in the 19th century, but it did get mollywopped by Prohibition in the 20s, and since 2014, it has been Lazarused back into production as part of what is now, the cooling whiskey boom. The price that we see here at Costco is at $59.99, which sort of puts it into that mid-range price range for whiskeys. It is a good price, especially in comparison to what you could find it at Total Wine, which is the next closest price at $64.99. Additionally, we can find it at one of our local liquor purveyors for $69.99. So it is around. You can find it, but Bevmo unfortunately did not have any of it available, at least to compare online. This means that if we did buy it at Costco, again, we would have saved $5 like we would have saved with the Yellowstone off the Total Wine price. So I really start to begin to wonder if Total Wine's just like, you know what, let's take the price from Costco and we're going to add $5 to it. If you had to figure it out that way. But yeah, so the percentage difference, though, is going to be 8.33%. The ABV on the Peerless Small Batch Bourbon is quite healthy at 111.3 proof or 55.65% ABV. But maybe that's how much it is when it goes into the barrel, maybe? The tasting notes that I could find on the Peerless Small Batch mentioned that there's a very noticeable tobacco flavor, which in my opinion is a great flavor, charred oak, sweetness, along with vanilla and unsalted caramel, with a very noticeable ABV, which would make sense with an ABV so high. So all that being said, this one was going to be a pass. And then really the main reason why we decided to pass on this one is because it has a cool story with it, and it has a nice kind of antiquarian feel to it. But the point scores, as far as on the ratings on it, were quite low, actually at 78 points on average out of 100. And that makes me a little suspicious that perhaps maybe it did have a great legacy prior to being shut down, but nowadays it's still kind of in the early stages of figuring out how to get their sea legs back as far as bourbon is concerned. So I think that this one is going to be a pass for now, but as time goes down the road and maybe as they get everything kind of more solidified and perhaps even come out with an age statement, then that would be something that I would definitely maybe consider. So it's going to be a pass right now, but maybe consider getting it later. All right, so that's it for today's Mix and Match Whiskey Wander from the Costcos in San Diego, a medley, if you will. And I really hope that you enjoyed this video. And actually, I hope that you enjoy all of these videos, whether they are the wanders or the hauls or the reviews or the unbottlings, the unboxings, and really all the amazing stuff we got cooking up for you, because we have tons of amazing stuff cooking up for you. And if you do like them, please don't forget to like and subscribe, because it really does help the channel to grow, and we are so thankful for that. But also because, I like to think that it pleases the whiskey gods. It helps with your whiskey mojo, and you get notifications when our newest videos come out on Sundays and sometimes in between. Just before I go, just remember, if you do find a whiskey that you love, just buy it. Because if you don't, maybe not in this case, but in other cases, somebody else will. And it might even be me. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your week. I'm out, and adios.